most of my best production never took more than 10, 15 minutes to form the foundation. You know, you could spend a month tweaking it if you want, or a week tweaking it, but the core, the foundation, if it doesn't happen quickly, you know, it's not the idea, or it might not be the idea for that time. Because there's also plenty of times where I come up with something and I'm like, yo, I like this, but I like the idea, but it's not clicking for me. Put it away, come back to it a month later, and it falls together in 2 minutes. You know, so like, for me, the best things should just be, or my best work, I can't tell anybody else what their work should be. But for me, my best work has, for the most part, been fairly effortless when it comes to creating the foundation.
All right, killer. What about...
I don't really have a process because the inspiration can always come from somewhere different, right? Like, the inspiration could hit from a conversation. It could hit from a sound you hear walking down the street or driving up down the street. Inspiration can come from a sample that you've heard, or another song that you've heard that you really appreciate. The inspiration can come from so many different places that there really is no process. Kind of just sit down and say, okay, what are you feeling like today? And whatever you're feeling like is where you start. People on social media will tweet me, as I'm sure they've tweeted you guys as well, and just ask the question of, what did you use to make such and such? It doesn't matter, because what mattered the most was what was going on up here. Whatever tool you use to get it out is almost irrelevant. You know, they all have their pros, they all have their cons, but the first instrument that you have is your ears and your brain. One of the parts of my process, which I didn't realize was weird or abnormal until Blue pointed it out to me one day in the studio, because I was just sitting there playing the record that I want to sample, and I'm just moving it around in different places. And he's like, what are you looking for something? I said, no, I'm making a beat in my head. So I go and find as I'm listening to the record, I'm remembering what I want to chop, where, then I just go back and sample each part into the MP when I was using the MP, or sometimes in Logic now. But a lot of the planning all happens up here. So when you hear stories, like sometimes you hear me mention I made that beat in, 3 minutes or 30 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever. It's the physical work of it.
Right, is what it is.
Didn't take me that long because the majority of it happened up here. The average person doesn't know what goes into making a song. They just know how a song makes them feel. And as producers and as artists, our job is just to make people feel things. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's feeling sad, happy, triumphant, inspired, whatever it is. Our job as musicians is just to make people feel things. You know, like, average person doesn't care about what goes into making the song because they don't understand it. They don't need to. One of the things that I always say is, when I sit with artists sometimes, we try to build something. One of the things, not that I always say, but I always try to envision in my head is, during what part of your show is this record going to be performed, right?
No.
Is this your show opener?
Right.
Is this that moment where all the lights go black?
Right.
The audience doesn't know what's about to happen and there's a big explosion of music? Is this your encore record where you come back onto the stage at the end of the show? Is this where you bring out your surprise guest unexpectedly and everybody goes crazy? So I think for me, thinking about things along those lines allows me to inform the kind of musical decisions that I'm going to make when I'm creating the records. One of the problems I see with a lot of younger producers, and it's the same thing I used to do, is because you don't have an artist right there in front of you, rapping right in front of you when you're making a beat, you tend to fill it up to the point where there is no room for a rapper anymore. And you're sitting here in your bed like, oh, this is free. Like, and then when the rapper hears it and will like it, and then when they'll go try to rap to it, and they're like, there's no room. There'll be so many times where I'll be in the studio, and the rapper will be like, yo, I love this. Like, this is crazy. Then they will go in the booth and be like, yo, the beat is swallowing me alive. So you kind of have to remember less is more and leave room for the artist so that you can build on it after. You know what I mean? And arrange and things like that. Like, you don't want to try to arrange too much before you even have a song written to it. Because A, you're kind of
shooting your load before anything happens, and you're restricting the artist. And most artists don't like to feel restricted. A lot of times with most songs, it'll be like there's usually one or two key elements that are what really strike you about a record. And everything else is kind of just the shape around it. Like if you love that guitar riff or that guitar melody, not only don't change it, use the same one. Take it from the original master and use it in your new one. You know what I mean? There's certain riffs as well that I listen to and I realize I have to listen to a while. I'm like, that's the part of the song that gets, so I need to make sure that I capture that part or keep that part, no matter what I do with it. Even if I make it from a hip hop record to a house record or vice versa or a rock record or whatever, keep that melody. And there's certain key balances you might want to keep, like, so as far as the mix levels, like relative mix levels. In other words, if you're kind of digging the way that the profession is playing off of, say, the acoustic guitar or whatever, and something about the way those two are bouncing off of each other are what initially grabbed you about the record, that's what you love, keep that. And work around it and build around it. You know, there's really no sure shot way to get around demoitis. It's just really a matter of faith in the producer. You know, and if you really feel that strongly about it, and go with your gut and don't change it. But just remember, you're running the risk of, shutting down what could be an even greater record. Don't just sit there and learn how to make a beat. You gotta know how to engineer it too. Because even if you're not mixing the record and engineering yourself, you gotta be able to say to the engineer, give me an extra note, bring me up at 30K. You know what I mean? Or I need to take that the percussion threshold a little more. You know what I mean? You gotta be able to speak to them in their language. You don't have to sit there and be super technical, talking about semiconductors and VCAs, but you gotta be able to get the basics of what you want it to sound like. Because the more you can do that, the more you can eventually do it yourself and make it sound the way you want it, or the way you hear it in your head.
Speaking of making it sound how you want it.
I always tell a lot of people who, would like to be producers, especially like in the hip hop world or the dance world, I'm like, learn to be a DJ. Learn the art of DJing. Spend a year or two just studying that. You will inadvertently learn so much. Like, if anybody remembers the movie The Karate Kid, when Mr. Miyagi is just making Daniel wax on, wax off, and he's like, what am I learning? I'm waxing your car. But what he was teaching him was defense techniques. It's the same thing with DJing. Like, I learned so much about song structure, how to count beats and bars, from a technical standpoint, but also from my years of DJing. I started DJing in clubs when I was 15 years old. I was inadvertently not just learning the technical side of things, I was learning a lot about how music moved people.
Yep.
And I think that was the most important thing, was learning, like, aside from what a kick drum is or what a snare drum is, or what the programming, as I was DJing out for people from such a young age, I was learning how to take people on a musical journey. And that was probably the most valuable thing that I learned from all those years of DJing. And eventually, for me, you go from playing other people's music to learning to make your own. For me, the producer's job is not to make the beat. The producer's job, or to make the foundation of the soul, the producer's job, is to deliver the finished product. And to be able to have the vision to say, okay, these drums aren't the best. Let's get this drummer to do it. We need live guitars here. I want this guitarist to play it. And all that comes with time. The first time, if you're just working in your bedroom all your life and all of a sudden, somebody calls you to come work with them, you may not have the end to just start giving your opinion right away, but take it when you can, because those steps are the foundation of becoming a producer. Starting to give your input, and at the end of the day, produce. The persistence is key. If you're gonna do this, you have to do this for real. When I decided to make this my career and my livelihood, I literally lived it 24 hours a day. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Like, I had a job in the studio that I worked at from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then from 7 p.m. till 6 a.m., 7 a.m., I was working and perfecting my craft. I immersed myself in that environment and didn't do anything else. Learn how to position yourself to be able to be heard, which actually, because of things like the internet, immensely easier now than they were back then.
That said, I think the best thing for a new producer or for a producer in general, establish your base, establish your camp, establish your crew, your sound, your movement. Concentrate on building that movement, and eventually the artist that you want to work with will come to you. So they're going to want to in on that sound you created. That's the best advice I can give.